Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time you are watching this presentation, but we are here today to present the text titled Decolonial AestheSis, Colonial Wounds, Decolonial Healings. This text will be presented by Carlos Eduardo Schmidt and Mariana Helena Pinheiro dos Santos de Souza. So first of all, I would like to present the table of contents of our presentation so that you can follow. So in the first part of the presentation, we're going to make a contextualization of the text and the presentation and the authors. In the second part, we have a summary. In the third part, we're going to discuss. And in the fourth time, we'll have some questions for us to think, just to make it a reflection about the text. And in the end, we will present the references we used during the presentation. So it's important to keep in mind that this text was written by two people, Walter Mignolo and Rolando Vasquez. So Mignolo is an Argentinian researcher and professor. He works at Duke University in North Carolina in the USA, and his studies involves different aspects of the modern and colonial world, exploring concepts such as global coloniality, the geopolitics of knowledge, transmodernity, border thinking, and pluriversality. Mignolo has also published extensively on semiotics, Latino philosophy, and literary theory. And the other author, Rolando Vasquez, is also a researcher and a professor, and contributes to the movement of decolonial aesthesis and thought. He is an associate professor of sociology at University College Roosevelt. With Walter Mignolo, he has coordinated for 10 years the Middleburg Decolonial Summer School. His work seeks to transgress the dominion of contemporaneity, heteronormativity, and modernity coloniality. His research circles around three interdisciplinary topics: post-colonial thinking, visual social experience, and the critique of modern time. His work brings together a variety of fields such as critical theory, continental philosophy, post-structuralism, decolonial thinking, visual studies, and aesthetics. He has written about coloniality, modernity, the critique of modern time, and photography. So we couldn't actually find out the nationality of Rolando Vasquez, but either way, both of them work at Duke University in the USA. So contextualizing the text itself. The text composes a dossier that is part of a journey that started in 2010, 2009, 2010. The text was published in 2013 in a journal called Social Text. This journal is an academic journal published by Duke University Press. According to the website of the journal, Social Text covers a broad spectrum of social and cultural phenomena. The journal consistently focuses attention on questions of gender, sexuality, race, and the environment, publishing key works by the most influential social and cultural theorists. As a journal at the forefront of cultural theory, Social Text seeks provocative interviews and challenging articles from emerging critical voices. Each issue breaks new ground in the debates about post-colonialism, post-modernism, and popular culture. For further information, you can access their website in the following link. So it's important to keep in mind that both authors, Mignolo and Vasquez, already have some knowledge about this theme that we are going to talk about later. So and they are researchers in this field. So this is something very important for us to keep in mind, especially because it's a theme, it's a subject very complex, as we can see in the text. Besides that, it's important to keep in mind that this text was published in a journal that is already focused on this kind of subject. So it's important for us to know that in this situation we have authors that are researchers, that professors and researchers in this field, and also it's inside inside this field. So, to summarize a little bit the text, as I said, this is a very complex text. It's not an easy one. I mean, it took us to read multiple times, and still, it's a very difficult text. So, Mignolo and Vasquez make a state of the art. This is something very important, a state of the art, in order to demonstrate what has been produced in the field of decolonial studies and the force this area has gained throughout the years. So, when we say state of the art, we mean that both authors try to make an organization and to point out some productions regarding this subject. I mean, what has been produced regarding the subject. So this is a state of art. And besides that, it's important to keep in mind that they point out, they highlight the fact that this area, this subject, has gained some force, some importance throughout the years. The authors state that this dossier is an expression of the journeys that we will briefly outline here, extended by the trajectories of each of the contributors. We can say that these trajectories are all marked by their contact with the general frame of the project identified as modernity, coloniality, decoloniality. So pay attention that in this part, we put in bold because it's a very important notion. I mean, I would say this is one of the most important ideas highlighted in the text. For short, we write modernity, coloniality, decoloniality, and we understand this to be a single concept, not three different ones. So it's important to see that these three words, even though we recognize that the three of them have a meaning, put it together, they have one meaning, they have one concept, and they are separated by slashes. Not, one is here and the other is there. No, they are all put it together. They, the term modernity, coloniality, decoloniality, do not, in fact, represent anything. They are a signpost of conflicting enunciations, the rhetoric of modernity and its continual promises of salvation. So this is a very important notion, like the salvation caused by modernity, and the logic of coloniality, the continual hidden process of expropriation, exploitation, pollution, and corruption that underlies the narrative of modernity, as promoted. So these ideas, these notions are promoted by institutions and actors belonging to corporations, industrialized nation states, museums, and research institutions. Decoloniality appears in between modernity, coloniality, as an opening, as a possibility of overcoming their completeness. So it's important to keep in mind that decoloniality comes together in an attempt to work as a possibility, as an opening, let's say this way, to another form of understanding and theorizing the world and the human relations. So this is very important. This is a very important notion in the text. Besides that, the authors highlight the emergence of the modernity, coloniality, decoloniality, so this unique concept in South America. So this is very important since we are in South America and we are studying this concept exactly. So it's important to keep in mind that we are inside this new this field that is not new, but it's new in South America. And also, they defend the idea that aesthetics is an aspect of the colonial matrix of power. So this is important for us to pay attention. Aesthetics has to do with this colonial matrix of power, of the imperial structure of control that began to be put in place in the 16th century through commercial circuits and the colonization of the New World, and that was transformed and expanded through the 18th and 19th centuries, and it goes up to this day. So this is important to analyze that aesthetics has to do with this of colonialism and imperialism, and then why do we have to keep in mind that aesthetics has to do with that? Because, in the other hand, we have the decolonial aesthesis. So we have a shift over there. So decolonial aesthesis, according to them, is a movement that is naming and articulating practice that challenge and subvert the hegemony of modern and colonial aesthesis. Decolonial aesthesis starts from the consciousness that the modern colonial project, so there is a project, this is a very key word, it's a project, so it's not something random, it's something planned, and this project has implied not only control of the economy, the political, and knowledge, but also control over the senses and perception. So this is very important for us because the whole text, let's say this way, they make us think about this power that, I don't know, it goes in different parts of our lives, including our feelings, I mean, our senses, our perceptions, and also our knowledge. And what we learn is not random as well, it's something planned, projected for us to learn. And political and our economy is also part of this project, this modern project and colonial project. The authors highlight that the dossier focuses on the decolonial aesthesis as a critical intervention. So this is important. This is also a key expression, critical intervention, in which the artist and the curator are struggling to challenge the hegemonic normativity of modern aesthetics. So they also make a differentiation between aesthetics and aesthesis, because even though they may look similar, I mean, the way we type them, I mean, the way we write them can be very similar, but the ideas are not the same. So aesthetics is related to the philosophy or theories of aesthetics. Also, aesthetics has to do with the appreciation of beauty or good taste. And also, it's characterized by a heightened sensitivity to beauty. So as we can see, aesthetics has to do with this beauty, good taste, so this very aesthetic thing. And as aesthesis can be described as an unelaborated, elementary awareness of stimulation, a sensation of touch. And also has to do with the senses, the five senses. Visual sensation, olfactory perception, gustatory perception, auditory sensation, and touching. And also it has to do with the synesthesia concept. So they are different in meaning, as we can see. So aesthetics belongs to the sphere of philosophy. This is what the authors claim. And aesthetics belongs to the sphere of philosophy, and aesthesis refers to language in general, in any language. Thus, if aesthetics is indeed modern colonial aesthetics and a normativity that colonized the senses, decolonial aesthesis has become the critique and artistic practice that aim to decolonize the senses, that is, to liberate them from the regulations of modern, postmodern, and ultramodern aesthetics.
Hello, I'm Carlos, so I'm going to continue here bringing some points for our discussion. So it deals more or less with the second part, the second half of the text of the article, and somehow the concepts will come again, but a little bit deeper. And I know it is, as Mariana has already said, it is not easy to understand. Always we read again the text, we have new ideas, we understand it a little bit better, and because we deal with a lot of concepts, aesthetics, aesthesis, for example. We're gonna see here skill, poiesis, poetics, art, etc. And somehow we have a specific definition of this or that word in our minds, but the author presents another one. And just to take in mind that the T and the S in the aesthetics and aesthesis in capital letter is on purpose by the authors. Okay, and let us go. Let us continue. The first point here. These points are thought to be discussed more deeply in the classroom. Okay, we chose just some of them. The authors present others too, and at the same time, we're gonna, after this discussion, the point here for the discussion, Mariana will present some questions for our next class. Okay, so the first point here is aesthetics as a philosophical discourse. Art as a skill, poiesis, poetics, and art as form. So, the authors state that aesthetics comes into being as a philosophical discourse in 18th century Europe. So we have a specific time and a specific place, 18th century Europe. And the idea of this is to regulate the taste in Europe and from Europe to the globe, to the whole world. So in this sense, art is understood as the set of social practices upon which modern, postmodern, ultramodern aesthetics work on regulating. So the word here, the verb to regulate is very important. And besides regulating self-critiquing their regulations and occupying as much space as they can. So they not only regulate it, but they self-critique their regulations. So to critique the regulation is part of the game somehow. And art, they state that art entered the Occidental vocabulary in the way we understand nowadays, okay, in the 12th and 13th centuries, meaning, I quote, skill as a result of a practice. So skill as a result of a practice, okay? And they state as well that it was most likely the derived translation of the Greek word poiesis. That means skill. So, the moment when poiesis becomes poetics is what Aristotle discussed in his treatise Poetics. The transmogrification, that's the term used by them, the transmogrification of art as skill into art as norm, as good taste and beauty, is what Kant brings to completion in two works of him. The first one is the observations on the beautiful and the sublime, and the later one that maybe is a little bit more famous, the critique of judgment. So the authors here go really deep, okay? It is not just a mere opinion, or they're not working only with modern authors. So they go to ancient Greece, they go to Aristotle, they are going to Kant as well. Okay, so a modern philosopher. Um, um, so that's the first point. Okay, the second one, the meaning. Okay, the other ones will be a little bit faster. Okay, because of the time. The meaning of decolonizing the senses. Okay, so what is the meaning of decolonizing the senses? When we say we have to decolonize our senses, okay, so yeah, the authors say that modern aesthetics have served as a mechanism to produce and regulate sensibilities, as we have seen a little bit in the last point. Okay, so the colonial aestheses are processes of thinking and doing, of sensing and existing, in which the modern distinction between theory and practice has no purchase. So it includes everything, thinking and doing. Okay? Decolonizing the senses means, in the last analysis, decolonizing modern, postmodern, and outer-modern knowledge, regulating aesthesis in order to decolonize the subjectivities controlled under the modern imperial aesthetics in their aftermath. So it's something really deep. We're talking about our senses, the way we see, the way we perceive reality has to be changed, because somehow it wasn't we who decided somehow the way we see things, but it was given to us. Okay. Um, and afterwards, the authors, other point, they will talk a little bit about the two consequences of replacing aesthetics by poetics. Okay, so according to them, when aesthetics replaced poetics in the 18th century Europe, so it was not a long time ago if we consider the whole human history. Okay, when it happened, two simultaneous phenomena took place. The first one was the formation and transformation of Western civilization, displaced poetics. The formation and transformation of Western civilization displaced poetics and replaced it with aesthetics. That was the first one. Okay, and the second one, the second consequence is that aesthetics was, that's maybe the biggest problem here, and a consequence of the first one. Aesthetics was universalized and became used as a normative framework with European philosophy. Aesthetics, as many other normative frameworks of modernity, was used to disdain or ignore the multiplicity of creative expression in other societies. So, if you could talk about in terms of particular and universals, it's somehow our particular, or in other words, the European particular way of seeing the world became the universal one. And doing so, it ignored, it raised the multiplicity of other societies. Well, we have the authors mention as well the consequences of Kant's his works, above all the the his work about observations on the beautiful and the sublime is regarding to it above all. Okay, and they say that these observations of Kant mark a crucial moment in this double transformation. What double transformation? The colonization of the Europeans' own past and the colonization of the present and the past of all coexisting civilization. So it was not something that just happened. It started happening in the 18th century Europe. Okay, the Europeans themselves started to change the way they saw their own past. Okay, so they colonized their past, not only their present, and the present and the past of all other coexisting civilizations. Okay, so the authors say this is an expression of the denial of coevalence, the temporal discrimination to which aesthetics contributed. To decolonize aesthetics means, so when they are here uh, trying to promote somehow the decolonization, the authors, or the stating the decolonization, the necessity of the decolonization of the aesthetics, what do they mean? So they mean to the link from the universal mirage of the local experience. Okay, so we have to link it. We have to recognize that this is not universal. This is just the particular. This is the experience of a local place. This is a local. So this is a local experience. And next one, let us talk so about decolonial aesthesis as an option. So what do we have to do? Do we have to raise Europe? Do we have to raise this way of thinking, this way of being, this way of doing? No. What we have to do, what the authors state, is that we have to recognize it as an option. Okay? So the colonial aesthesis is today an option. This idea, the thinking that they have is an option entering the artistic, philosophical, ethical, and political debate. Why that is important? Because if we put the colonial aesthesis as the truth, the objective truth, or something like that, okay, we will transform it in the universal. Okay, so we will be colonizing. Okay, but that's not the idea. So the authors here propose an option. Decolonial aesthesis is an option as the 18th century European way of thinking should be just an option. So an option entering the artistic, philosophical, ethical, and political debate. By saying that the decolonial is an option and that decolonial aesthesis is an option, we mean that there are other options. In fact, we assume that there isn't anything but options. To better grasp what we are implying, and he will just put four the authors, coexisting options, some in conflict and others in harmony with each other. Okay, in all are the sphere of aesthetics and aesthesis in different perspectives. Okay, so four options. They propose four options. Okay, the first one is the market option. The second one, the outer modern option. The third one, the de-westernization of art option, and the fourth one, the decolonial option. Okay, so just more two comments, 2 points here for our discussion. We can dip it in the classroom, go deeper in it. Okay, the next one is the consequences of modern aesthetics. Okay, modern aesthetics has been such, as the authors state, that that's the problem. What it excluded was erased. At best, it was accumulated in ethnological museums in order to preserve the cultures, among quotes, that had already been deprived of their validity as contemporary aesthetics. So that's it. What did Europeans do? They erased the cultures and just brought that to museums. Okay, and they say that they are preserving cultures doing that. Okay, so one of the basic strategies of coloniality was the classification and ranking of people and regions. That's another important point. We can go deeper in the classroom. Okay, so colonizers classificate and they rank people and regions. So talking about people, for example, they disqualify the minds in bodies of color as the authors state. Okay, so and we see that nowadays in society. For example, the Oscars in Hollywood. So how many black people, indigenous people do you see receiving it? That's a problem. And in other places as well. For example, if we go to sport, we go to soccer here in Brazil or in Europe, the Champions League is the biggest soccer tournament in the world. Uh, don't look at the players. Look at the coaches. What are the color? What's the color of the coaches? So there is a disqualification that they disqualify the minds in bodies of color. And the second one is disqualifying regions as falling behind modernity. So how can we identify those regions that are falling behind modernity? So according to the authors, we can realize that, we can perceive that according to the concepts they use, okay, that are used, and maybe we use these concepts too. For example, second and third worlds, or underdeveloped or emerging economies. Brazil is an emerging economy, for example. Anyway, so, but on the other hand, if we don't use these terms, which terms would we use? So, basically, people of color and in relation to these regions are considered at best, according to the authors, second-class people, artists, scientists, intellectuals, etc. So that's caused by the coloniality mentality as well. That started, very important to 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 point out always the local, okay, the place and the date, 18th century Europe. And just to finish here my presentation, and so Mariana will continue, just give some questions for our discussion in class, is what's the meaning of decoloniality according the authors? They have already talked a little bit about it, okay, but just to finish, okay, a quote from them. Decoloniality is, at once, the unveiling of the wound and the possibility of the healing. So he starts according to the title of this article. It makes the wound visible, tangible. It voices the scream. And at the same time, the colonial aesthesis moves towards the healing, the recognition, the dignity of those aesthetic practices that have been written out of the canon of modern aesthetics. So that's the importance, that's the meaning of decolonialism, of decoloniality. Okay, we need to give voice to these other ways of thinking, other cultures, other ways of being, of existing, okay? And at the same time, we give voice to them. That's a process to heal as well those that are suffering. And when we say those, we are talking about, if in terms of quantity, most of the population, okay? The majority of the population, not only the Brazilian one, but in the world. So thank you very much. Now, Mariana will continue with the questions.
Okay, Carlos, thank you very much for this very complex discussion. And just to finish, we have 3 questions for you guys that we can discuss in class. You can just have some thoughts, make some reflections, okay? So the first one would be, what responsibilities do universities and research institutions have in the context of the debate regarding modernity, coloniality, decoloniality? This question has a lot to do with the latest text that we read. Um, and the author is also Mignolo, so we see that he knows, I mean, what he's talking about, and he has all this discussion very well formed. But I think that's and Roberto has already asked a question similar to this one for us to think. But I think it's important for us to now think of this answer. Okay, I mean this question and the construct of an answer regarding this text that we have just read it. Okay, and the second question is, would you be able to name or to identify decolonial practice in the fields of art, literature, theater, music, etc.? Okay, so if you do, okay, let us know, share with us. If you don't, let's see what the others have to say. And to finish, could you point out some examples or possible ways to re-exist/resist regarding aesthetic practice and senses? Okay, so I think these three questions are very potent for us to think. And it's important to keep in mind that this expression re-exist is a very well used expression in the text. Okay, that's why we brought into the questions. So that's it. And just to finish, here we have our references. We used both texts because, as I said, so the first one is this text that we've just talked about, Decolonial AestheSis, Colonial Wounds, Decolonial Healings, published in the Social Text Journal. And the other one was this one that I said when I was reading the first question, okay? The historical foundation of modernity coloniality and the emergence of decolonial thinking. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I hope you can have a very, I don't know, a very good discussion according to the text.